Hey guys, Stefano Marchese here. So this video is to show you how to navigate my Soundtrap curriculum. You will get the access through Google Drive, so you will have access to this 12 folders. We're going to start with the first one. We're going to open lesson 1. In each folder, you will find a lesson plan and all the material and handouts in support of the lesson plan. So we're going to start with opening the lesson plan. So as you can see, the lesson plans are developed in a very standard way, I guess. So in the first lesson plan, the teacher will cover the very basics of Soundtrap, how to use it, what is Soundtrap, what's a DAW in general, which stands for Digital Audio Workstation, and we will familiarize with a loop library and the fine rhythm section. So as you scroll down, you have the materials that you need, and of course you need a laptop or tablet, headphones, and then all the hyperlinks, all the links to the other handouts in the folder. So in this case, we have the student assignment sheet, anatomy of the software handout. You have the duration of the lesson, which is around 45 minutes. And then you have this yellow areas here, which are my tips, Mr. M's tips, on how to use eventually the software in case you're not very familiar, or even just suggestions, simple suggestions on how to address certain issues. Of course, you have the purpose of the lesson and then the procedure. So for this first lesson, we're just gonna explore Soundtrap, and I just want to show you a couple of things. So as you open a new tab, you need to type soundtrap.com, and as you open the website, so first of all, you need to know that Soundtrap is a full online digital audio workstation. It will require you to create an account. You can go with, if you don't have a license, if your school didn't purchase the license, you can go with a free account, which is going to last, I guess, for 15 days, and then giving you full access. And then after these 15 days, you still have access to your projects, or the projects of your students. However, you will have limited access to the samples that you can use in your projects. So we're now going to go with Enter Studio, and this is how we open or start a new project. Clicking on Enter Studio, you will recognize, as you're familiar with any DAW, many of the things that you will see. For example, you have of course the menu, and then you have a transport bar, you have a menu bar with playing back and forth with your track. Of course, you have the record button here, the BPMs, and so on. But in case your students are not familiar with this kind of interface, or the teacher is not familiar with this kind of interface, you can always go back to your lesson plan and click on Anatomy of the Software handout, or simply go back in the folder, and the Google Drive folder. And you can print this out and give it to your students prior to the lesson, so at least at the beginning of the lesson, so they can know at least how to navigate this new interface. Everything is numbered, and there is, of course, everything is labeled. As you can see, number 1, if you go down, is a pull down menus, and then number 2 is the track. That you can see, and so on, right? So I think this would be very useful. I use it in my classes, even if the students are already familiar with digital audio workstations, because I think it's important for them to review most of the times where the things are. We're going to ask students to, not of course at the first lesson, but eventually we'll ask students to change the BPMs or to turn off the metronome. So it's very important for them to be able to navigate it comfortably. So going back to our digital audio workstation, I always suggest to start with a new project. So you can start simply just by exiting this menu here, and then you're gonna click on on the new track in case you want to record a new track. But for this first lesson, I recommend to go with loops. I know that usually it's not very common, I guess. I found many different educators having different opinions on this matter. I think it's important for the students to start with something that they're comfortable with and with very easy or go figure out kind of instructions. So usually what I do, I explain them where the loop library is. In this case is right here. As you can see, there's an icon with 2/8 notes. And if you click on this icon, there is the whole library opening. So you will start with featured, and as you can see, you have different labels here, red labels, which of course you don't have access to it. But when you create the free trial account, you do have access to all of these. So eventually you can use it, I guess, and just picking the sound that you prefer. Okay, so what I suggest in this first lesson is to create a 1-minute composition using only loops, and to compose, to pick loops for a rhythm section. In fact, if we go back to our lesson plan, you will see that I suggest in the procedure 1 or 2 minutes for the definition of rhythm section. I found in my practices that is not obvious, and of course what is obvious to us, we're musicians, so what is obvious to us sometimes is not obvious to our students that probably are new to music. So just take a couple of minutes to define what's a rhythm section and how to find these instruments. So in this case, as you can see, you start with featured. You can go with beats or drums, and then add a bass, or as I say to my students, anything that has a bass tag. So it could be also a synth bass. That's totally fine. It doesn't have to be an acoustic bass, or it doesn't have to be an electric bass, as long as is an instrument in the bass range. So, and I mean, I think a synth bass is fine, but they will figure this pretty quickly and easily. And then I'll ask them to add a guitar or a keyboard or a piano. So as you can see, you have piano, you have synths, and of course for keyboards, I include synths as well. So, and it's pretty easy for the first one. So as you can see, you can go with beats, for example. Click on whatever beat you want. You can double click or drag it. I found easier to double click and instruct the students to double click, but usually the first lesson I tend not to give too many instructions. So basically I tell the students, open the software, here's where you can find the loops, remember to save. So we're gonna create this project right away, so we're not being super picky on the sounds that we want. So I'm just gonna click on different samples just to get to a groove. So we have, there you go, we have bass, drums, and then we're gonna add some kind of, let's add a piano for this one, and we're gonna go with this one. How about this one? Let's go with this one. All right, so these are composition for our rhythm section. So now what we need to tell the students is just to point a couple of things. This composition is set for 120 BPM. So since we're asking them to expand this groove to 1 minute, we need to explain them a couple of things. First of all, this bar here is, as you stop on it, it's the cycle mode bar. So if you click on it, it will turn gray, and this means that the cycle mode is off. If you click on it again, it becomes purple. Also, there's a little icon right here, as you can see. Oh, I lost it. There you go. As you can see right here, there's a little icon. This is the loop icon or cycle mode. You can turn it off just by if it's gray, or turn it on if it's purple. So now we're asking them to expand this loop up to a minute. So here's how you can do it. You can just click on the timeline to figure here on the bottom where we're going to get and when we're going to get to a minute. Right now we are 42 seconds. So if you click here, we have 50 seconds, 56, 58, and 1 minute. Of course, most of them will figure out that, of course, it's 120 per minute, right? So we know that in a minute is 60 seconds, so 120 is double that, so they can figure easily that out. But anyway, we can show them how to expand these tracks up to a minute, because we need the tracks to go on to a minute, right? This is what we're asking our students, right? So now we can show them that we can expand the whole thing to a minute, or we can layer, just creating a little sense of an arrangement. For example, we're not starting. We can start with just bass at the beginning, and then eventually we're gonna go with piano right after. So it's very up to them. So I suggest for this first lesson not to give too many instructions. We want the students to be creative. And so sometimes I figure that the more I talk, the more I tell them what to do, somehow I'm telling them also what to pick and what is cool. Well, everything is cool as long as they can be creative and develop the creative thinking, as Webster liked to say. So we're going to go back, and this is it. I'm basically done. We're gonna start with beat, for example. This could probably be an example of what you're gonna see your students composing, right? And then, eventually they can speed it up, remembering always that we want the arrangement the song to be long 1 minute. So of course you can stop and play just using the space bar as any audio workstation. So remind always the students to save anything they do, anything any kind of change they do in the way. Just remember them to click save. Then of course you will see that the software will mix the three tracks for you. When this mixing is over, we're going to see a little arrow pointing down. In the meantime, we can do a couple of things. First of all, we can rename the project. I always ask the students to rename the project, just because of course the software will go with your first name and the number of song you composed. So in this case, you're going to go with my name is Stefano, of course, so Stefano song number 4. Well, that's not the easiest way for us to find these projects when the students will send it to us. So as you can see, while I was talking, the mixing is over. So now we have this little icon. If we click on it, we will download the mix, right? And so the file will have whatever name of the song we gave. So it's very important to remind the students to name properly their project. So if we're going to go back on a lesson plan, we're going to see that there's the student assignment sheet. So if we click on the student assignment sheet, there's the whole procedure. Of course, this is linked to your lesson plan as well. So we're asking the students to compose a 1 minute, to create a 1 minute composition in any style using drums, beats, bass, or piano, keyboards, guitar, using only the loop library. This is the procedure. And as you can see, I always stress click save, click save. It's never too much, of course. So just remind them, even if it's in the procedure. It happened a couple of times that the software, for some reason, crashed. So, and if that happens, unfortunately, the software is not set to autosave, so it's not going to save the changes. So eventually, the student will lose everything. So we don't want that to happen, of course. So we're going to go back to the student assignment sheet. You're going to see that there's project number 1 and first name. So in this case, my name is Stefano, so I'm going to call it this is our first project. I'm going to call it project number 1 dash Stefano, and I click. And of course, everything, any change needs to be saved. So again, we need to save. There you go. In this case, we just changed the name, so it's not going to do the mixing again. So now we're ready to download it. We click on download. We're going to see, we're going to find this file, whatever you set your downloads to go. I'm set to go to downloads. So, and eventually the student can send it to you. This is it. It's a pretty simple first assignment, and so I hope you find this video tutorial useful. If you have any question, you can always email me on info@stefanomarchese.org, and I will be happy to help you. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.